We're gonna play football. Yippee!
Scotty, beam me up.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
The CFB on OSG with your host, the Online Sports Guys.
Welcome back, everybody. It's another week of the review. It's the OSG's college football show where we talk about the news and notes and all kinds of interesting things going on in the wide, wonderful world of college football. I am OSG Phil. He is OSG Nelson. We are the Online Sports Guys. And we like to talk about sports-related stuff, and in this case, college football. Before we get started, I'll let John do the honors to start the show, telling people where they can find us, not only on YouTube's, but in other places.
Right. So if you're either seeing us or watching us or listening to us, you can do it in a bunch of different places. First and foremost, let's go ahead and promote the app. Is available right here, so I'm trying to shine it to where it's up there. So there's the Android version with me and the iPhone version with Phil. So don't forget to download the OSG Sports app, iOS and Android, for all of your listening pleasures. So whenever something is live, you'll know about it instantaneously with the alert system that is set up with the app. Go to theonlinesportsguys.com for all the news that Phil feels like he should vent on a daily basis. Also, like, friend, be a part of the conversation on Facebook at OSG Sports and on Twitter at OSG Sports. He's at OSG Phil. I'm at OSG Nelson. You also have Jay Wilkerson16 and AP_Goldman85, as well as OSG JDub for all of us on Twitter. And let's see, Soccer Down Here Daily Radio on the other side of things. You can follow along on all of those platforms, as well as Instagram at Soccer Down Here. I think that covers it.
Yeah, I'd give a rat's ass about Twitter.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything. Lots of places, lots of opportunities to get content. Sports, and I believe the term that many of the non-sports fans use is yay sports ball.
Sports.
We're talking college football here this week, and we're going to start things off with one of John's favorite subjects, and that is the transfer portal.
Portaling, yay.
Scotty, beam me up.
And an interesting story this week, as we have talked over the past multiple weeks about guys being able to just kind of pick up and leave when they're not getting what they want. They're not being able to win the jobs that they're trying to win. So they're just putting themselves in the transfer portal, and poof, they reappear at another school. However, this week we got word that the transfer portal actually kicked somebody back.
Yeah.
In this case, it was tight end Luke Ford, a former Mr. Illinois all-world football player who decided to initially take his services to Athens, Georgia at the University of Georgia, and decided, due to the illness of his grandfather in Illinois, he wanted to find his way back to Illinois. Well, the NCAA said, no, we're not going to let you do that. And instead of being able to be eligible immediately, Ford will still get to eventually play for the Illini, but it won't be for another season plus. And his gravely ill grandfather, he may never actually get to see his grandson play in a game because he's now going to be stuck in what we would call NCAA limbo as opposed to the portal. John, in light of everything else that's gone on this offseason with portaling, does this seem like on the surface that it's even fair?
No, and that's the beauty of portaling, because when you have athletes that move just because they want to move, they seem to be the ones at the front of the line. But in a case like Luke Ford's, where you want to be closer to home, you want to be closer to family, NCAA denies your waiver request after you move from Georgia back to Champaign, so you can be a tight end at IU, at Illinois, University of Illinois, for their football program. But if you go to at LukeRedX97, that's his Twitter account. So Luke Ford on Twitter, at LukeRedX97. Time to get bigger, faster, stronger, and do whatever I can to help my team. It's in God's hands. Hashtag Go Illini. Continued prayers for at Bobby Roundtree 97. So really, that's the only thing that can happen is that Luke Ford gets to work out, go to class, and he can be there. He can watch. He can do workouts. He can do all those kinds of things, but he just cannot play in things that are meaningful. The family hired high-powered attorney Thomas Mars to try to twist things and have the NCAA change its collective mind. That did not happen. So obviously, if you have a good reason for wanting to portal and go back someplace, apparently good reasons don't work, and just having a reason just seems to work.
It seems incredibly hypocritical in light of moves like Justin Fields taking off from the University of Georgia and Tate Martell basically being told by Ohio State to enter the transfer portal for no really readily apparent reason. And yet it's a miracle, but he's eligible to play immediately.
Strange.
And I know the NCAA is going to revisit the whole idea of
Are you sure?
Well, they claim that they
just
are.
turn it into the Wild West. You know, we've had our Curt Flood case, and I think that it's safe to say that it might have been Justin Fields that was the Curt Flood of college football. But now that we've had portaling get to this point, everybody wants to go from one place to another. Then, you know, obviously, if you want to go, you can. But if you want to go for a really good reason, it's ludicrous. But once again, I can't really say that I'm wholly surprised by what we're seeing out of Indianapolis.
And that's the amazing part to me, because if you're gonna let people do this, if you're gonna let kids go ahead and leave, which quite honestly, considering the way coaches just up and leave in December or January, pretty much every season, there's no reason the kids can't do it too at this point.
Exactly.
But if you're gonna apply a rule, and in this case, I believe the NCAA rule is 100 miles. If you're going to do a hardship transfer in the portal, it's like 100 miles.
Yeah, there was the Virginia Tech case, and the kid was just outside that mile range by like 3 miles, and they wouldn't allow that one either.
Right, and it's the same thing here basically with Ford, but there's not an even application of the rules.
It's a tight end who wants to play at Illinois. It's not a defensive lineman. It's not a quarterback. It is a tight end who wants to play at Illinois. It's not a coach going from one school to another. Not a defensive lineman. Not a 5-star defensive lineman. Not a 5-star offensive lineman. Not a QB. Not a running back. Not a wide receiver. Not a cornerback. Not a safety. Not a kicker. A tight end who wants to play at the University of Illinois and have his grandfather watch. You can portal. You just can't play.
And he's not leaving because he got beat out for the job.
No.
Unlike pretty much everybody else who's in the transfer portal right now.
Yeah, unless John Law is chasing after you, but it's not the case here either.
Yeah, see University of Florida, but we've gotten into that already. We won't go into that further. Yeah. But just to add to the transfer portal palooza here, West Virginia is potentially losing not one, not two, but 3 safeties, all who have entered, 2 of them who are listed as potential starters for the 2019 season, all of whom have entered the transfer portal. Kenny Robinson, Derek Pitts, E.J. Brown, all said that they're looking to move on, despite Robinson being an all Big 12 player last year and potentially an All-American candidate with 4 interceptions last year and 7 in his career. Pitts, he played in all the games last year too, including having a special teams touchdown. Brown didn't play as much, but still, you're not losing just one. You're losing 3 guys at the same position at the same time potentially here. That's also could be, 3. Not only would that just torpedo West Virginia,
but you're assuming they play defense.
Well, in some way, shape, or form, they have to line up and play defense.
Yes, you have to have 11 guys out there.
Yes, including 2. Generally, it's considered that you like to have at least 2 guys playing safety at all times, which is
in theory.
There are exceptions to that rule, but in a base defense, that's the kind of setup.
So you can have 11 on 11. You need 2 safeties. I understand where you're coming from.
a little bit of cause for concern there in Morgantown.
I think that Neil Brown has his guys, and to the factors that we have said in the past, for one reason or another, that you're portaling. Quoting one of the most immortal characters in all of movie history, Fred Dalton Thompson's character in The Hunt for Red October. Russians don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
Russians don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
I'm hoping that Neil Brown is much like the Russians, and he has a plan in Morgantown.
Yeah, he's still a good hire for the Mountaineers,
Yes.
and I think they're going to be a good team. It's just weird. And lastly, since we're on the subject of portaling, I want to bring back up somebody we talked about last month, and that's former University of Florida signee and potential portalee who was going to be going to Oregon and is now ending up at USC, and that's former four-star defensive back Chris Steele, who said midweek that he had kind of suggested, even though he was ready to go to Oregon, he may have gotten a scholarship that mysteriously opened up down at Southern Cal. Talking about taking a hop, skip, and a jump in advantage of things, sounds like Mr. Steele is going to the highest bidder, maybe.
Well, didn't his dad say one thing and everyone else on the planet say something else? It's like, where are you going? Well, I'm going here. Well, no, your dad says you're going here. Oh, then I guess I'm going there. Yikes.
Yeah. When dads strike back.
Yes. Highest rated player in the University of Florida's recruiting class. And remember what happened with Brew McCoy. We talked about him last week, going to Texas from USC after, and then
back to USC.
Defensive back Greg Johnson, wide receiver Velus Jones. They thought they were portaling away, and now they're just not portaling. And this is according to 27 Sports and their unnamed sources. Steele's enrolling at USC, officially visited Oregon. So I guess you'd have Oregon, parenthesis, OV, close parenthesis. And now he was back on campus with Brew McCoy. And so, number 5 corner in the country back in 2019, number 6 player at any position in the state of California, number 42 player overall on 24/7 composite board. So you're not going to Oregon, so you're staying in South Central Los Angeles.
And speaking of South Central Los Angeles, we'll keep with the producer Flo here in the first block of the review. The OSG Sports Team talking college football on our weekly college football podcast and video podcast for those of you interested in such things. And that's more news coming out of the Los Angeles area. It looks like USC and United Airlines have come to finally hammered out the details of the naming rights agreement.
All right. So when this first came aboard, did we or did we not say just go ahead and name the field and keep the Coliseum name as is, and then everything would be fine? So what did they do?
I think they did something along the lines of naming the field and keeping the Coliseum's name as is.
The United Airlines Field, the "the" is in the middle. United Airlines Field at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. You want to talk about lower thirds that are going to take up the whole bottom of the bar when you're doing your locator, and for the play-by-play guys who are going to be with the Pac-12 network and anybody else tied to a Pac-12 game. From United Airlines Field at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum in just south of South Central Los Angeles, it is the USC Trojans taking on insert team here. That took 35 seconds to say that.
Yeah, it seems to be a California thing because wasn't it the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim?
Yes. Yeah. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim off of the 5 freeway in Orange County that play on weekends and days that end. Yeah, it was that long of a thing. 15.
They're either really prepositional heavy out there or they've all read Monty Python skits.
Yeah. 15 years, $69 million naming rights. And so then, of course, when United Airlines and USC said, yeah, let's do something in front of the name of the LA Coliseum, everybody was like, hold it. quoting Buford T. Justice, hold it. And so then they just name the field, and so everybody moves on, and it's ahead of the season opener against Fresno. And so I think we're just either going to call it the Coliseum or the Mausoleum, and since United Airlines isn't paying you or I, we're just going to do it like that.
Yeah, we should add the Coliseum's in the middle of kind of a massive overhaul right now.
Massive renovation.
Yeah, a little $300 million or so to kind of upgrade the facility towards the reasonably close to the modern era.
Yeah.
If you've ever been by that stadium or inside that stadium, you can speak to it, and John probably could speak to it much better than I can, having only driven by it.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a dump.
It needed it. It needs it. It needed it. And from all indications, at least the sections on the renovation that have been made are very, very pretty. So, yeah. So United Airlines, you have your naming rights deal. Everybody's happy. 15 years, $69 million. So for $4+ million a year, United Airlines gets their name on grass.
What do you say we head to a break here, John? We've kind of been talking for a little bit about this, that, and the other. Stay tuned, stick around, everybody. We've got another block of the show to go, including such little tidbits as the Pac-12 getting, we ridiculed them for going for public offerings, but they've actually got the money that they're asking for. We'll talk a little bit more about how that actually could come play out, and they may end up with a little bit more money than we thought. That, and we're going to also talk about the Oklahoma drill, a staple of college football since the 1950s for a lot of teams. There's a lot of, the NFL's pretty much outlawed it, and they're kind of strongly encouraging college football teams to do the same. We got a couple other items that pop up. Hopefully we got a couple things on John's radar that he wants to get off his chest as well. But we'll get to all that and more when we come back in the second block of The Review. This is the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Everybody buckle up. Buckle up.
Let's go.
Buckle up.
Can we go to the store? Mom, can we get some ice cream?
Everybody, buckle up.
A lot goes on in the car, but you're in control. So only move when you hear the click that says they're buckled in. Never give up until they buckle up. Learn more at safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Welcome back to The Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive, and now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
If you want to scale a mountain, buy boots. If you want to turn your crush into something more, say hi. At Country Financial, we know protecting the things you love and preparing for tomorrow start with simple steps. So we help you take small steps today with insurance and financial services that can have a big impact on your family's future.
For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871.
Welcome back to the B Block. Everything B, everything else, the kitchen sink, whatever you want to call it, here on The Review. It's the OSG. The OSG Sports Team talking college football. College football has a BCFB, so we can call it the B Block.
Yes.
I am OSG Phil. He is OSG Nelson. And we're talking college football on a weekly and sometimes more than once a week basis.
Check.
This is our weekly news show, The Review. And John, got a few other items to talk about. We hit on a couple things here at the beginning of the show.
Hit them.
I want to get your thoughts on the Pac-12. We talked a few weeks back about their search for, I guess,
money.
We hold the world ransom for $100 billion.
An infusion of cash to kind of make themselves a little bit more competitive with the other Power 5 conferences. And surprisingly, they actually have some people who are looking to invest.
In theory, yes.
Larry Scott figured he could get between 500 and 750 million from some investors to kind of beef the product up. Believe it or not, he actually got that by not one, but multiple bids.
Okay, all right. So here's the verb. The verb is claim. So Larry Scott is claiming to have multiple bids, but somewhere, of at least $750 million in hand. Okay, great, fine. And required reading would be John Oron's piece at Sports Business Journal about the details.
Yes.
What I'm looking at, and they're going to be consulting with the RAIN group to try to figure out what to do from here. But okay, let's just say $750 million. All right, great, fine. So you have how many schools in the Pac-12? 12?
14.
All right, so 14 divided by 750.
You're looking at roughly an extra
52.
Roughly an extra 15 million or so.
All right, so $52 million. 750 into 14. So 5 times 4. So you're looking at $52 million per school. In theory, that is if every piece of revenue attached to this alleged $750 million is heading in that direction. So how much of this is the conference hierarchy getting? How much is the conference itself getting to use it for whatever? What are they using it for, Rosie? That's what I want to know. And so, all right, you're getting $52-ish million if you're a school, if the payout is all going to the institutions, which I don't think it is. What in the wide world of sports, I know I'm boring you, Pac-12 does that to a lot of folks. What's the money going to? Is it going to infrastructure? Does the conference and Larry Scott get to hang on to any of it? Is it going all to the schools for this infusion of cash? What happens? Is this $10 million over 5 years and you get $2 million bonuses if you're each of the schools? I want to know how money is going to be broken up. I want to know how the money is going to be handled. I want to know what it's going to be going toward. And is this a one-time infusion of capital? Because, I mean, think about it. If it's a 5 year, let's just say you lay the money out over 5 years, and then you're looking at $10 million a year, $10,400,000 a year over 5 years, in addition to TV contracts and everything else that's there. What happens when the 750 goes into the pot? Is there another 750 that's going to show up in 5 years? I mean, what's the end game here for the Pac-12? And honestly, out of this one-time infusion of cash, what good does it do, and where does the money go? Are you helping out athletic departments? Are you helping out corporate infrastructure at these schools? Are you doing projects like at Kansas, the kind of things that they're trying to do there with all of their kind of renovations? I still have too many questions about A, these alleged multiple bids, B, where they're coming from, and C, where's the money going to? Too many questions for me in all of this. And if it's a one-shot deal, what happens when the money goes away? What happens when that 750 goes and gets spent? You're going to go calling for another one to divvy up another piece of the pie? And what is this first alleged group interested in the $750 million infusion of capital? What's their say going to be? I mean, what's their end game in all of this? There are so many questions right now. And when you have Big Ten schools getting $54 million per year, you would have schools in the Pac-12 14 getting $52 million, period. period. SEC payouts, $43 million a year. ACC payouts, almost $30 million a year. Pac-12 selling off a portion of their person gets each school, in theory, $52 million. That's it. What good does this do the Pac-12?
Well, I don't really. You brought up a whole bunch of good points there, and they've never really made it clear exactly directly where that money's going to go.
Nope.
The implication is that it's going to help balance out the payouts where whereas the Pac-12 and really the ACC is kicked back about $29 million or so each to their conference teams. The idea being, I guess, and I'm presuming this because I have not seen anything really documenting that that's exactly.
I haven't seen a thing documented outside by the Pac-12 saying where this money is going to go and what happens when this alleged $750 million goes into the institutions, into the conference. I've seen nothing.
Even if they spread the payments out, it still doesn't even things out. The biggest hurdle there being that the Pac-12 doesn't have the TV rights deal that the Big Ten, the ACC, even the ACC now has with their own ACC network that's debuting on the four-letter word, nor definitely don't have what the SEC has, nor the Big 12. Yeah. All of them are raking in a lot more money and have had a lot more success over the last few years, which is not to say in the grand scheme of things, money can't buy you love. Beatles. But money seems to be able to buy you a lot when it comes to college football, be it a beautiful facility, be in ultra-modern weight rooms, exotic dormitories with all kinds of games. Just ask the Clemson Tigers about that. It goes back to something that we bring up, it seems like almost every week, about how the game is such a business now, and it's no longer about being competitive on the field. You've got to be competitive off the field, and that means if it means bringing in extra money or an extra investor to get that way, then that seems to be the approach. Nobody else is even trying this or has even explored it, and it may blow up right in Larry Scott's face, which would not shock me in the least, and couldn't happen to a better guy. But that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Obviously, somebody's at least interested or has broached the subject with them being the Pac-12, saying, we might be interested in doing this. Somebody clearly sees that the potential for a payback or making their investment back is there. So
this to me is a one-time investment. This is not a yearly thing. And that's my biggest concern.
No, but if you spread $750 million out over the next 10 years, it's an extra $75 million a year. It's not enough to make It's not enough to make a big difference if you want to have the same revenue as the Big Ten or the ACC.
It's $5 million per school if all of that money is given to each institution. That's an extra $5 million. Okay, great. We're going to have a party and buy some tents.
And you can actually buy a lot of stuff for $5 million, but that's neither here nor there. It still doesn't make them one of the big boys, and the Pac-12 has lagged behind everybody else on the field with the product here over the last couple of years. I mean, yeah, you can say, well, they're on the West Coast and they're on a delay and they don't get the primetime TV spots that everybody else does, and you wouldn't be wrong. Scott's been kind of his own worst enemy when it comes to scheduling games with his teams, putting them in the worst possible time periods for anybody outside of those living on the left coast to actually see the games. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, is getting eyeballs on your product.
And the thing is that if I was focused on trying to get eyeballs to the Pac-12, I would try to get clearances for the Pac-12 network as much as possible. And focus on yourself. Get yourself saturated in 3 of the 4 time zones as you can, or central, 3 of the 4 time zones, and Hawaii and Alaska. So focus on yourself first, because if you're in the Eastern time zone, like the SEC, the ACC, the Big 10, 12, The Central Time Zone's got the big 12:10. That right there is half of the time zones in the country. And all they really have to do, the only weird one is if you're in the Central Time Zone and you get stuck with a mediocre program and you've got a noon Eastern kickoff, so it's 11 a.m. Okay, so your tailgating serves breakfast. If you're the Pac-12, you can't try to sit there and cater yourself toward an Eastern or a Central Conference time slot, because how many people are going to be watching, because the market's already been saturated with everything else that's happening in those two time slots. Focus on yourself first and make yourself stronger.
Well, that is something that they've just said that they're going to do, partially prodded a little bit, I think, by Fox Sports. You're going to see this season more 3:30 kickoffs for the big games in the Pac-12. You're going to see earlier kickoffs, even 3:30, 6 o'clock kickoffs that would actually allow people on the East Coast to actually see the games. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But shall we move on?
Move on.
Okay. Let's move on to another subject that is of some interest to those of us who follow football closely. It's the Oklahoma drill. If you've ever played college football, or if you've ever played football pretty much on any level, you know what the Oklahoma drill is.
Man, go, press, go. Make a play, J-Man. Great, go. Yeah.
It's essentially the whole team lining up in a big circle, coach calling out two names and two guys going at it to see who can get the better of the other.
Yeah.
No intrinsic purpose in terms of a skill that drill really hammers home. It's a toughness drill. It's a drill to say I'm bigger and better and badder, and I got a mean streak.
¿Quién es más macho?
But it's been around forever. The drill's been around since really it was initiated, and it's called the Oklahoma drill because former Oklahoma Sooner head coach Bud Wilkinson kind of introduced it to the game back in the 1950s. Teams throughout college football and to some extent pro football have practiced it over the years. But with the ever-increasing emphasis on stopping extreme contact and unnecessary contact in football games and in practice between players, the NFL has asked for their teams to stop running the drill, and they're kind of been indirectly hinting at college football teams doing the same. And it's a subject that came up at the SEC spring meetings in Destin, Florida this year. Several coaches had some thoughts on it. Are they right by kind of weaning guys off of this? I mean, there's already lack of contact and some tackling issues when it comes to the way players perform on the field. Is this a good idea, or is it something that helps bond a team?
I think there are other ways to bond a team, especially in the 21st century when it comes to that kid. I don't think a 14 to 18-year-old kid is a fan of Oklahoma. I don't think an 18 to 22-year-old kid is a fan of Oklahoma.
Many kids are. I think it's coaches.
Yeah, and so, but once again, you have this generational disconnect of, well, this was the way it was for me, therefore my learnings apply to this particular audience that is trying to learn from me and my assistant coaches now. I think there are different ways to bond. I understand, I get the whole idea of toughness, and I think that at the end of the day, I think that if you're improving as a group, if you're a football team that is below average or average, I think that improvement over time on the field and on the practice field improves morale and gets everybody closer as a unit. I think that if you're a successful football program, continued sustainability and the possibility of winning championships, I'd like to think that brings camaraderie and maintains camaraderie these days. But I think that togetherness, watch Rudy, have a pizza party, throw lawn darts on the practice field or something. I think that there are safer ways, and I think that there are more ways today with this generation of athlete that won't have them beating the daylights out of each other and trying to figure out what their name is And when they're asked what their name is, they look inside their shorts and sit there and see that their name is Russell Athletic. I just think that there are drills to me that work. There are drills that are functional. And like I said, I think that it just comes down to a disconnect of those from a certain generation and our generation and those slightly younger than us who have done this before. I think there are other ways. I'm not going to say better ways. I just think that there are other ways that you can have that kind of camaraderie, spirit, togetherness, and learning other than Oklahoma, especially in the middle of June and July when it's 400 degrees outside with matching humidity.
All right, and probably the best summary of it is a short, sweet, simple statement by Tennessee football coach Jeremy Pruitt.
Mm-hmm.
According to CBS Sports, who interviewed several SEC coaches about the subject, all Pruitt had to say was, "I have no idea how this makes you a better football player."
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah. No, I'm down with that.
Anything you got on your plate that you want to get out there?
Yeah. Let's obviously. And these are a couple of quick things. Alabama superfan Walt Gary passed away at the age of 36, and obviously when you have folks like Walt who are as integral to the fan base as he is, to have him pass so young, obviously we're thinking about him and everyone close to the program. A sign that you're really old: Frank Gore Jr. signs with Florida Atlantic.
Frank Gore Sr. is still playing in the NFL too.
Right. And speaking of Florida Atlantic, they have moved their student section to behind the visitors bench for the upcoming season in 2019. I think that's going to be a hoot and boca to keep an eye on that one. You've got Texas El Paso QB Kyle Loxley arrested, charged with marijuana possession and making a terroristic threat, among other things. According to Brian Fisher at College Football Talk, Kai might have just won the Fulmer Cup for UTEP all by himself.
Yeah, by the way, Kai is the son of Maryland head coach Mike Loxley.
Yes. Okay, so records obtained by ESPN 600, picked up Friday night, charged with unlawful carrying of a weapon, possession of marijuana, terroristic threat, and DWI. So, of course, the school has not commented on that one way or the other, and their season starts on August 31st against Houston Baptist. And there's another member of the 2007 University of Florida team who has been charged with murder. You can now add Tony Joyner to the list. According to the Fort Myers News Press, Tony Joyner arrested and charged over the weekend with second-degree murder after being accused of slaying his ex-wife 3 years ago. So those are a couple of some of the things that are out there, at least in my world. Here's another one. Before I send it to you with the stuff that's on your mind. Did you see about the arrest of Texas A&M defensive back Derek Tucker?
Yeah, the taco arrest?
The taco arrest.
Oh, geez. Just when you think you've seen everything.
The victim claims he and Tucker got into a mutual physical altercation, which was broken up. The victim says Tucker fled the scene only to return a few minutes later to strike him in the back of the head. So it was a dispute over tacos.
A disagreement over tacos.
Yes, a disagreement over tacos. I don't know if it has to do with what was on the tacos. I want
mild salsa.
Yes. Released from jail, $5,000 bond. Yeah, shows about tacos.
No jalapenos.
Those better be some incredible tacos. That's all I can say.
No doubt. And with that, I guess we ought to wrap up the taco version of the review.
All right.
In case you're wondering, this is the OSG Sports Team talking college football on our weekly news podcast, The Review. He is OSG Nelson. I, of course, am OSG Phil. We are the online sports guys. Don't forget the rest of the OSG Sports Team, Jay Wilkerson16, OSG Dave J-Dub, at @A_Goldman. What's his number?
AP_Goldman 85.
Yeah, that. We are the online sports guys. We have a phone app, believe it or not. You can find our content there. Look up OSG Sports. Same thing on the Facebook and Twitter. and YouTube, all over the place. And don't forget our sister podcast, the I almost said it wrong, Soccer Down Here. Wow, that would have been really embarrassing.
Soccer Down Here, and they have an app as well, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 Eastern time on the OSG Sports Radio Network.
Everything soccer you always wanted to know and were afraid to ask.
I'll tell you.
So let's wrap things up for another college football week. We are closing in quickly on summertime practice, fall practice. As we get through the month of June, we go into July, and before you know it, the games will be kicking off. So for my good friend OSG Nelson, I am OSG Phil. We are the OSG Sports Team. Have a good week, everybody, and we'll catch you again next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Peace.